everybody. I'm Nicole.
I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Sarah, and together we're the co-founders of Whale Tales, a living library of cetacean stories.
And today we're going to New York, concrete jungle where dolphins go to for some crazy reason.
Amazing. Sit back and enjoy as we dive right in.
Hello.
That went exactly as I hoped it would.
Oh, I'm so glad. Before we get started, we have a very special announcement that's not about New York as much as it would be fun to be celebrating our 6th anniversary of this podcast in New York. Gosh. It is not meant to be. Our lives are all insane. But yeah, we've been podcasting for 6 years, guys.
That's bonkers.
I don't understand.
I don't either. What is time?
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. And we say this every episode, but especially this month, just want to take a moment to say, like, this would not be possible without your support. Thank you so much, listeners. Thank you for caring about whales, for sharing that love and passion and enthusiasm with us, for letting us be unhinged and nerdy about cetaceans and really opinionated. We love doing this, and we love that you seem to love going on this journey with us, and we hope that you continue to enjoy it as much as we do. Thank you so much.
Yay! Thank you. This month we were super lucky to get to chat with Danielle Brown, the Director of Research, as well as Chris St. Lawrence, the Communications and Outreach Lead from Gotham Whale in New York, on the podcast. We talked to them about their research on humpbacks, plus lots of other cetaceans and marine life off the New York and New Jersey coasts.
Yes, there's sharks in this episode.
Oh my God.
Whoa.
Okay, you'll be fine.
Sarah and I were so excited to talk to Danielle and Chris back in February, and we nerded out hard, so I hope you enjoy this conversation and the really, really cool stuff and amazing whale tales they shared.
Yeah.
So it was amazing, and we're so glad we got to talk to them. Let's get to it. Okay, today we're here with Chris and Danielle from Gotham Whale over on the East Coast. Thank you guys for being here. We're really excited to talk to you about all the stuff that you're doing over there with humpbacks and everything else that's happening. We don't really know much about the East Coast cetaceans, so we're excited to learn and nerd out. Do you want to introduce yourselves and also Gotham Whale?
Sure. I'm Danielle Brown. I'm the Director of Research for Gotham Whale, and I've been with the organization since 2015.
I'm Chris. I do communications and outreach with Gotham Whale. I've around for about 4 years now.
Awesome. So Gotham Whale is relatively new, and I thought it was a whale watching company when I first started, but I don't think that's correct, right?
Right.
Okay.
You know, a lot of people have that misconception. So Gotham Whale is a nonprofit research, education, and advocacy group. We collect data from multiple whale watching companies. So we began back in 2011 collecting whale data, but Gotham Whale actually started a little bit before that and was initially focused on pinnipeds.
Oh, okay.
But as we started to see that whales were becoming more common in the area, they kind of switched to collecting whale data. But we started working with just one whale watching boat. Now we work with 6 different companies, which is really exciting. But there needs to be a repository for that data. And that's exactly what Gotham Whale does, as well as collect data from just the average person, from our citizen scientists.
Amazing. So can you tell us kind of why did Gotham start even with the pinnipeds and then moving into the whales? I know that the whole main thing I know about humpbacks over there is that they have come back similar to us, but just later than we started seeing them again.
So Gotham Whale was started by Paul Seiswerda Sr., and I don't want to speak for him. Unfortunately, Paul passed last year. But he was the innovator who started Gotham Whale back in the beginning. He loved pinnipeds, and I think that's kind of where that began. But of course, he was interested in all marine mammals. So when word started to get out there that people were seeing whales off New York City, of course, that was a big deal, right?
Yeah.
And we've learned so much over the last 14 years. One of the things that we're finding, there's a very common thought that these humpback whales are returning to the area. But from all the data that we can gather and the historic data we've looked at, it doesn't look like they really were here historically. So this is all new. It's a new phenomenon that's going on right now.
So with the humpbacks coming back, or not, sorry, with the humpbacks not coming back, this is hard to say because it's just such a thing that we associate with humpbacks. So what can you say, like with your citizen science and your matching programs, before we get into that, can you tell us what you've learned? Where do we know anything about where these humpbacks were? Do you have enough individuals who are old enough to have been matched anywhere else? What is this mystery? I'm super more curious now than I was before.
It is really, really interesting. And we learn new things every year. So there's still a lot we don't know. I definitely want to point that out. So what we're finding is that about 30% of our whales belong to the Gulf of Maine feeding population, which is the closest one to us. It's the southernmost feeding ground. For anyone who doesn't know a lot about humpback whales in the Northwest Atlantic, there are feeding grounds. There are distinct feeding populations that are north of us. Oh, okay. So humpback whales are really only known to occupy those areas north of New York, right? So the Gulf of Maine, Eastern Canada, and West Greenland, for example, those are the feeding populations in the Western North Atlantic. What we're finding, though, is that some whales from the Gulf of Maine are extending further south into our area, but it's not just the Gulf of Maine. So a smaller percentage, about 5% of the whales we've seen off New York and New Jersey belong to the Eastern Canada population. And they've been seen all the way up in the Newfoundland area. So we do get whales in our area from multiple populations. And what's even more interesting is that for many of them, we don't know where they belong, and they have never been seen before.
That's so random. Every time they confuse me. Every time we learn more things about humpbacks. So you see them in New York, and then they go up still in the rest of the summer. They go all the way back up, kind of like here. They feed in New York and then continue north, and then you see them coming south again in the fall.
Yeah, so that's another interesting question. So I think it's important to know that we kind of always had some humpback whales off of the New York and New Jersey area, I should say, New York Bight, but they were more likely to be seen during the wintertime, and they were a bit further offshore. So we did occasionally have humpback whales out there, but what we're finding over the last 14 years or so is they're spending the spring, summer, and fall in our area. So some of them do stay for an extended period of time, but some of them don't. There are a few that we'll see once and we never see them again for the rest of the season. And there is some evidence. We've had a few matches with the northern feeding grounds where they were seen in the New York Bight and then were seen up north afterwards or before that. So we do know there's some limited back and forth, but it's not all of them. The average that a whale has been seen in the New York Bight is about 40 to 50 days. And that's only looking at our small study area, which is, it extends to just outside New York City. It's a radius of about 30 miles from the city. So that's not including other areas like Eastern Long Island or down south in Cape May, New Jersey. I'm absolutely sure that residency time is longer if we included those areas. So to answer your question, yes, some of them go back and forth. Some of them don't seem to do that, and they kind of stick around.
Wow. And have you had matches with any breeding grounds?
We do have just a very small number of matches to the breeding grounds.
And which ones?
So we've had a few matches to Silver Bank or Salmona Bay. We have had a few matches to Turks and Caicos. But as you can imagine, because of the demographics of what we're seeing, we mainly see juveniles and young adult whales. Okay. There aren't too many matches down to those breeding grounds. We've also had matches a little bit further south in the Virginia, North Carolina area.
This is fascinating. Could talk about this forever.
So in general, do you tend to see a lot of the same individuals either throughout the season or between seasons? You were saying that they're often juveniles and subadults. So is that like the do you see the same individuals between different seasons or just within a single season?
Sure. About 50% are whales that we see once and we never see them again. But like the other 50% are whales that we see, we've seen more than once. Very often it's, there, I would say it's even about 25% of all those whales we see multiple times in a season.
Okay.
So, but there are some whales too, some really interesting stories where, you know, we documented a whale for 2 years in a row and then never saw it again. And then 10 years later it showed up. So yeah, there's some really cool stuff going on. It seems that the some of the juveniles tend to return, and there's actually some evidence that they spend they spend a few years in this area and don't actually travel outside of the central East Coast. So
Interesting. And then, so you said that there was an individual that came back 10 years later. Do you know if that was a male or a female, or do you know anything else about that?
we don't know. For
No?
most of our whales, because they're young, we actually don't know the sex of most of them, unless we're real lucky and happen to get a behavior that gives us insight into whether it's a male or female. That doesn't happen too often, but there's only a small number we know, and mothers and calves are pretty rare.
Right.
So we don't see mothers and calves too often, and that's like the for sure way to know, of course, if it's although 2024 was a little different and we did have quite a few mothers and calves, so you never know.
Interesting. What's gonna happen next?
Interesting. Okay, is there anything else about your humpback population that you see that you think is important or distinct or unique that you wanted to share?
Sure. I mean, other than the demographics that we see, we also see some behaviors that are a little bit different than what is most common, I think, on the primary feeding grounds up north. So for example, it does depend on the prey that they're feeding on, but in the southern Gulf of Maine, for example, sand lance are a very common prey species. It's their favored prey species in that area. So they see a lot of bubble feeding on sand lance. We don't see them feeding on a lot of sand lance close to shore. They mainly feed on a fish called Atlantic menhaden, where they are surface lunge feeding. Surface lunge feeding is it's very unpredictable. It's very sporadic, and it's also quite dangerous for the whales because you really don't know where it's going to happen or where they're going to pop up. So that is definitely something that's kind of unique about our area. Bubble feeding is very obvious from a distance. So a lot of folks can pick up some bubble feeding even from a mile away. You can see those bubbles coming up at the surface. So you're kind of like, well, there's going to be some whales coming up there. Here, it's quite different. Also because our whales are small. Most of the juveniles we're seeing are between 25 and 35 feet long. That's it. So they're pretty small animals, and they're typically alone. We'll see a single whale by itself. Sometimes two, sometimes three together, but most often it's just one. So, you know, it just means that our area might need to be managed a little bit differently than other feeding grounds.
Yeah. Huh.
Interesting.
Oh, so can you tell us about your citizen science project and how that started? I know that it's a small one, but you're kind of growing it and running it yourself. So how did that happen, and how is it working?
So back in the day when Gotham Whale started, folks started to report their whale sightings to us just to let us know, like, hey, that we saw a whale over here. And that kind of turned into this, our wanted program. And we call it our wanted program, where we're encouraging citizen scientists to submit sightings. And a citizen scientist could be anybody. It could be somebody who's on the beach. It could be somebody in their recreational boat out fishing. We are trying to build it. About 10% of our sightings right now come from citizen scientists, and we would love to encourage other people to submit them. A lot of people still don't know about our program, so we're definitely trying to promote it. But it's really important to get these sightings from citizen scientists because often they come from areas where our whale watching boats don't go. The ones our contributors kind of are restricted to, they're restricted by distance and they're restricted by time of how much time their trips go out. So our citizen scientists are sending us things from just outside those areas or further offshore potentially where the whale watching boats don't go. So they're incredibly important.
Yeah. Absolutely. Especially because you said you had 6 whale watching companies. Is there a lot more in New Jersey and New York? Or is that kind of...
That's about all of them. There
Okay.
are some other boats who do it, who whale watch opportunistically,
Right.
but those boats are doing close to full-time whale watching.
Okay. And then so you get fluke shots from the whale watching companies, and then you do your matching with those? Is that kind of where you're getting your matching and your that kind of information from?
Yes, most of it. So we encourage any information from our whale watching contributors. So if they don't get a fluke photo, that's okay. We're actually really great at matching dorsal fins right now.
Yeah.
Which is something that we find to also be important because there are some whales where we never see the fluke, and we've only seen multiple dorsal fins. So any kind of photo goes into our database. Also, the locations are just as important to me as the photographs because we want to know where these whales are, where they're spending their time, where they're feeding. So all of this information is what populates our internal database. We have thousands and thousands and thousands of data points over the last 14 years. Our catalog has almost 450 whales in it.
Awesome.
Which is quite a few. And the number of whales we identify every year goes up. We identified almost 160 whales last year. We saw 160 individuals, which is a record for us. It's more than we've ever seen. But yes, so all of that information is what's used to develop our humpback whale catalog.
Amazing.
Amazing. I guess maybe it's time to move on to other cetaceans or other individuals that you might see in your area. So do you want to talk a little bit about any other cetaceans that you see on your trips?
Sure. I mean, I don't want to take time away from Chris, so if you want to jump in, I know I have a tendency to commandeer interviews. So do you want to talk a little bit about what else we see?
Yeah, I mean, you're the expert. But so inshore, it is mostly humpbacks. But over the past few years, at least where I'm based out of in New York, I go out of Brooklyn, we've had an increase in bottlenose dolphins, which is a species that in the past hasn't been quite as common along Long Island. And then we've also had minke whales, which Danielle might be able to speak a bit more to. But we've been noticing some seasonal patterns in minke whales and when they're more common and not, generally in the colder months as compared to the humpbacks, which we see more in the warmer months.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Yes. It's been interesting that we've seen this anecdotal increase in minke whales as well. And they also seem to feed on the Atlantic menhaden inshore, which is really, really cool to see. Minke whales, though, are more difficult to identify by the individual. But there is some limited evidence of at least one that kind of stuck around that had a unique dorsal fin, and we saw multiple times. So I would love to look at minke whales as well and see what relationships are there. Occasionally, we do see finback whales close to shore, which that always surprised me because of how large they are.
Yeah.
But yeah, finback whales we've seen. And once in a while, if we're very lucky, we do get a North Atlantic right whale. We've had several sightings over the last 14 years close to shore. So
amazing.
That's
and
very
is it
cool.
just bottlenose? As I know, there's common dolphins further north, but you guys are just getting bottlenose?
No.
Okay.
So there's a few different populations of bottlenose dolphins. We have the Terciops arabinus, which are the closest to shore, but then further off we have the offshore bottlenose. Then there is the short-beaked common dolphin. Short-beaked common dolphins are always offshore. They're offshore year-round. But during the wintertime, they will kind of replace the bottlenose as they migrate south, and we'll see them a bit closer to shore. The further off you go, though, we have had some contributors who've done some really fantastic canyon trips or offshore wreck trips, and they've seen anything from pilot whales to Rizzo's dolphins. Striped dolphins are also super common.
Yeah.
And some of the folks have been lucky enough to find sperm whales, which is very cool.
Amazing. Yeah.
Wow.
That's just, you just got to go offshore on either coast and just see what you can see one day.
Yeah. So, but you said those are like longer trips not just your sort of standard whale watch trip, right? Yeah.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Anywhere from 8 hours up to 24 hours.
Yeah.
Right.
But it kind of shows you like how important it is to put effort in, you know, in these outside areas from typical close to shore areas, because you really never know what you're going to find. And we've also found many of our adult humpback whales that way. We've come across some very well-known individuals from the Gulf of Maine. Further, just by traveling a bit further offshore. So
interesting. Do you see other like non-cetaceans? I'm assuming there's pinnipeds and other things like that as well.
Yes, on the our whale watching boats have seen mainly harbor seals and gray seals. Also, lots of sea turtles, loggerheads, leatherbacks, green sea turtles, Kemp's Ridleys. We see them pretty often. There are other pinnipeds that do occupy our areas, which I just know from stranding data. But as far as I know, just the harbor seals and the gray seals have been seen from our contributors.
We also, for sharks, which are difficult to see on a boat, but are pretty cool when you do see them. We have a bunch of different species. Threshers seem to be some of the more common here, at least along Long Island. But this summer we had some pretty exciting sightings of baby great whites. We had one right off the tip of Sandy Hook, which is right outside the New York Harbor. And then I saw some photos on social media of people who were out on the water about the same time who were all having baby great whites. Super curious, coming right up to the boat.
Oh,
which
interesting.
is super crazy. But yeah, we have threshers, spinners, so many that I can't list them all. Yeah, they are here, and we see them occasionally.
That's cool.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I meant to bring up the baby great white.
Yeah.
Which is that's so wild. Cool. Yeah, that's really exciting.
So are your sharks feeding on your pinnipeds or just other fish, or?
They're too small to the great whites that we're seeing in 2024 were pretty small. I mean, in like they were pups almost. I mean, they were 5 feet.
So,
right.
But it actually. So one of my research associates, Celia Ackerman, actually submitted. She got a fantastic photo of a baby gray white, and they originally thought it was a mako, but then further inspection was like, oh no, this is a baby gray white. Yeah, but they have a very distinct swimming pattern where they swim, you know, in that typical position with their dorsal fin above the surface. And we had actually seen a few sharks doing that. You know, on other boats we're seeing that too, but weren't able to get good photos, and it made me wonder how many were we seeing? Yeah, so cool stuff.
That's so fun. Wow.
Another thing that we see quite often is cow-nose rays. That's another really exciting thing to see. We get big schools of them flying under the boat and stuff. So.
And bluefin tuna.
Oh, yeah.
Bluefin
much
tuna
bigger than the baby sharks.
Oh man, it's been very cool in the New York Bight these last few years. Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah. And that's just inshore. You go offshore, you can have your basking sharks, sunfish, whale sharks.
Whale sharks? Really? That's really far north than I would have expected, but that's amazing.
Well, New York is a lot more south than we are. Like, because of the angle
of the continent. I know.
Yeah.
Still.
Well, and these are closer to the Gulf Stream, too.
Yeah, the Gulf Stream is the biggest thing.
I mean, there were manta rays, too, now that I think about it. So, the closer you get to the Gulf Stream, you're going to see all kinds of life.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. Okay, focusing back on cetaceans. Trying to, before we just talk your ears off about everything in the harbor. Is there anything else about cetaceans or your research program or anything else that you want to add before we move on to our other segments?
The only thing that I would add is just piggyback off what you said about the dolphins, is that you know, sometimes I feel like dolphins get kind of pushed into the background because everyone's just like, oh, dolphins, you know. But a lot of people don't realize that Cape May, New Jersey, which is about, you know, it's a little over 100 miles south from our typical study area. That was known to be the furthest north that they went, really. So, yeah, a long time ago, it was thought that they didn't really go much further north than that. So we now know that that's not the case. We are seeing not only lots of bottlenose dolphin sightings, but huge groups in the hundreds. So, and they've been seen all the way out to Montauk now, and even up in the Gulf of Maine, they've had a few some bottlenose dolphin sightings. So we absolutely want those too. Just because they're not humpback whales, it's really important to look at our dolphins too. So that's what I would say. So anything else you would like to add, Chris?
One thing I think is pretty interesting that maybe not, we're still working on our own data collection for those. About Danielle was mentioning striped dolphins offshore. Ecotourism here in the New York Bight has kind of shown that striped dolphins are a regular presence here. Back in the past, they were thought to be a pretty rare occurrence, striped dolphin. They're more typically seen in places like the Azores and stuff. But yeah, they're pretty regular. I think I've seen them every time I've been out on the canyons, and in huge numbers. Those are also animals that move in huge pods. And so, there are these groups of animals out there that you're not going to see unless you're looking for them and unless you're out in those areas. And so there's importance to traveling to these areas and collecting that data so that we know where these animals are and so that we know where we can focus this attention.
Well, and also not only because we're kind of talking about canyons, but I know everyone's interested in the New York City waters. It's not uncommon for whales and dolphins to be inside New York Harbor now. It's not uncommon. We've had whales go up the Hudson River, pass right by the Statue of Liberty. It's just a handful. But in the Raritan Bay, which is still part of the New York, New Jersey harbor estuary system, so it's the location of busy shipping lanes running through the bay. They run west. We see dolphins now all the time, much more common than we ever did. So they are using these urban waterways.
Yeah, I think that's really important for people to know, that just because it's a big city doesn't mean there's not wildlife there.
Yeah, and just slowly returning, or just being seen more of whatever that's happening. But just it's kind of like Falls Creek here, but just much bigger. Yeah. We have a very small creek, not a creek. It's just called a creek. It's an inlet of ocean water. But every once in a while we get killer whales or gray whales in there just looking for herring or seals. Yeah.
But it's like right in
right in the city.
Between the two sides of our sort of downtown business core. It's crazy.
Well, it's become pretty common to see seals between Manhattan and the Bronx. They hang out at one of the parks. Yeah. So it's so not too different.
Yeah, definitely not what I would ever expect when I think about New York City. Yeah.
Amazing.
Before we continue with the rest of the episode, we want to take a moment to tell you about how you can support our podcast and everything we do at Whale Tales.
You can join us by becoming a patron at patreon.com/whaletales. You can join for $1 a month at the porpoise level, $5 a month at the dolphin level, or $10 a month at the whale level.
And each level comes with a variety of perks, like polls, postcards, access to extra interviews, extra stories, producing your own fun flip or fact segment of the pod, and, at some levels, listening to us talk more. This month, for our whale level patrons, we have a super special episode of Whale Tales Watches. It is, I don't think it's the most unhinged Whale Tales watch we've ever done, but it's
up there.
Up there. We watched the 1997
Yes.
Hallmark version of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yeah.
Starring Canadian treasure himself, Paul Gross.
That's why we watched it. And Nicole talks about her feelings about it a lot.
Yep. I still have a lot of feelings about it. And it's been I don't know, however long since we recorded that.
So yeah, it's a really good time, I think.
Yep. I will say, probably listening to us talk about it is more fun than watching it, except for the fact that you should bring up a picture of Paul Gross on whatever screen of whatever device you are using to listen to us while you listen to us talk about that movie.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you so much, patrons, for your support and letting us do this really weird, bonkers extra podcast that we highly enjoy. But you are all amazing. All levels, everybody. Thank you.
And if you aren't able to support us financially, there's still lots of things you can do to help us out. It would be awesome if you could leave us a rating or a review on your podcast platform of choice. This will help other people find us, and you can also just tell people about Whale Tales and everything we're doing so that they can join along for the fun.
And you can follow us on social media at whaletales_org, where you can send us all of your feedback so that we can keep making the podcast even better. Thank you so much.
Okay, should we move on to the last few segments?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, we like to ask all of our guests to share with us a fun flipper fact. We don't have Nicole to sing a little song for you, but yeah, fun flipper fact is just anything, a short fact that you like to share with your visitors or anybody that you're doing education with.
Well, so I have many facts.
Yeah.
So I was hard pressed to try to think of a fun one, but I was trying to think of something that most people maybe don't know. Whales and dolphins, when their calves are nursing, a lot of people ask how they do this, right? They're in water, and few people know that they actually use their tongue as a straw. So dolphins and whales, their calves actually have these ridges on the outside of their tongue. So when they roll their tongue into a little straw, they actually almost fit together like a zipper. And you can very clearly see them in dolphin calves, and that's how they nurse. They use it as a straw.
Yeah. So cool. And such a weird adaptation that they had to have when they went back in the water. Yeah. It's really fun. It just makes them cuter also.
Yeah.
Well, I love sperm whales, and I've always been fascinated that they're also the loudest animals on the planet. And I know there used to be that little fact, or at one point we thought it was a fact that they would use sound to stun their prey, and that sound was like a weapon or whatever. And that's no longer the true fact. And that's my new fun fact, is that that's not true, because people think it is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, a little bit of a reversal on that one. But still interesting. And the fact that there's still things to learn about how sperm whales use sound is super exciting.
Yeah, it's kind of like what people think narwhals use their tusks for, and it's not spearing prey.
It's not true.
Just like, how would they get it off? But whatever. Very
right.
Yeah.
Okay, and so our next segment is the purpose of Whale Tales in general, which is a sharing of a story. If you have a memorable or super fun and cool, unique cetacean encounter that you would like to share, we would absolutely love to hear it.
So again, I have so many. I was it was tough to pick just one, but there was an encounter with a pair of humpback whales a few years ago. So in addition to being the director of research for Gotham Whale, I also work as a naturalist on Jersey Shore Whale Watch. And one day we had a random trip in the middle of the week, and it was a high school. It was only a 2-hour, which is a shorter trip. And high school kids, they're just happy to be out of school, right? So, but little did they know, they would probably have this life-changing experience with these two humpback whales. We came across them and they approached us, which does not happen all the time. It does happen, but it's not often that they are watching you versus you watching them. And they decided to interact with the boat for about 2 hours. Wow. These two whales, they essentially rubbed their rostrums on the hull of the boat and were rolling upside down, looking at these students that were looking over the side and could not believe what they were seeing. Basically were giving us all of these behaviors that we hadn't seen for the entire year. And I know these things happen more often elsewhere, right? But for us, it was amazing to see them spy hopping next to the boat, looking at us, to see them lifting their flipper, practically touching these students. It was, and to see them move away and then purposely turn around and come back while we were sitting there in complete neutral and watching these whales. It really was just one of the most incredible experiences. them spouting on us, and just it was and me being able to actually show them parts of their anatomy up close, which was so cool. And then trying to explain to these students that this does not happen all the time. This is not normal. This is a very unique, very special experience. I don't think I'll ever forget that.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. Chris?
That's awesome. I was going to share my story about getting mugged for the first time this summer. But I think I have, there's one story that I can't not tell in this context. So this summer, back in May, right before Memorial Day, I was out on a sailing trip with Apparent Winds, a research and education charter sailboat. We were out on the Hudson Canyon for a few days. And we were looking for sperm whales for a filming project. We did not find any sperm whales. But so we had a spout in the distance, and it was our first spout. So we were, and in the past, when I've been on the canyon, we've been able to find sperm whales, and that's kind of the species I was expecting to see off the shelf break where we were. And so I thought that's what the spout was. And we get a better look. There's no dorsal fin. I was like, okay, well, that's a sperm whale. And then it wasn't. I pull up my binoculars, and we have a right whale, like speeding, like he is hauling across the horizon offshore of us. And so I'm like, okay, well, that's crazy. He was too far to get a photo, but like that was cool. No one's going to believe us. And so we keep going. We move inshore right up to the mouth of the canyon. I say inshore. We're still like 100 miles southeast of New York City. And then like this fog starts to set in, but just like, half a mile away at the edge of this fog, we see two whales come up and blow, and it's two right whales. And then we engined off, and then like all around us in this fog, like, just as far as we can see, it's just right whales come up.
What?
And so we ended up having 6 or 7 right whales around us right here, right at the edge of the Hudson Canyon. And so this was a few days before Memorial Day. And if you know the Hudson Canyon, Memorial Day weekend is insane. It's a parking lot of boats. And so we were like, we need to make sure that people know about this. We weren't going to be on shore for another few days. So we used we used Starlink or whatever to get a report to Danielle, and she sent it to all the people. And NOAA sent out an aerial flight a few days later, and over the course of the next week, they found 45 right whales.
What? Oh my God.
On the Hudson Canyon. And this is like a super, not only is it, do they not expect to see right whales on the canyon for any real duration? Over the course of the summer, for most of the summer, they had 82 different right whales right on the mid-Atlantic canyons. And so there were a few sporadic sightings before us from research vessels, but as far as I know, we were the first substantial like group observation of right whales here in the mid-Atlantic that led to that bigger feeding group discovery here, which is super crazy. And it's a big data set for that just gives them more questions to try to answer this summer to see if it'll happen again or what.
That's
but
like 30% of right whales of North Atlantic. Like, that's insane.
Wow.
It was the very next day that they went out with their aerial survey. And I think I was kind of getting this through text message the whole time from Chris. And I, it's funny hearing you talk about it this way because, I got the initial like, we think we saw a right whale, but, we're not sure, but we think we did. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then he was like, wait, we have like 6. And I was like, wait a minute, that's an aggregation. Like that needs to be reported immediately.
Yeah.
And I ended up, so Gotham Whale was actually the first reporting party of the aggregation, thanks to Chris and Apparent Winds. That's so cool. One of our contributors, American Princess Cruises, happened to be doing a canyon trip a few days later, and they were able to see able to show their passengers
we brought them to the exact same spot, and they were at the exact same coordinates. They had not moved a week later. It was crazy.
They were there for weeks. They were there for the whole summer, which was highly anomalous. So.
Was there any like information about the feeding? Was there like a bloom, not a bloom when it's fish, but like was there some kind of weird good year for fish, or what? Do we know anything more about that?
So that question's actually more complicated than you think. 2024 in general was an anomalous year.
Okay.
So the data on the oceanography that was going on in that year is still being analyzed by a lot of different groups. But what it is showing in general is that there was a cool phase, which likely had something to do with a large amount of Calanus that was out. Lots of zooplankton out near our canyons, not just North Atlantic right whales, but there are quite a few sei whales, which they do tend to aggregate in the same areas because they're both feeding on Calanus.
Yeah.
So yes, it does. Something was definitely going on. Whether or not it continues, we won't know. But that also likely explains the high abundance of sand lance, because sand lance do eat Calanus as well, which brought more humpback whales to our area too. So everything is connected, of course.
Yeah. We often burst into a course of Circle of Life on this podcast, and just another chance. Yeah, that's amazing and mind-boggling. Wow.
Absolutely
We just
wild.
had people on talking about North Pacific right whales and how we've seen like 2 in the year, and that was a huge deal. So it's just kind of like hard to wrap my head around just switching to that. And like obviously Atlantic right whales are also rare and endangered, but it's just like that's so many more. I think that's probably more than all sightings of Pacific right whales ever. So
Yeah, I mean they have the benefit they're closer to where
much
people
closer
are
to where people
more
are.
often. Yeah. So before we wrap up, we wanted to try to leave our listeners with something they can do, a call to action of how they could help whales in their environment or your environment if they're in that area.
So, I mean, I have a few initial thoughts. So, one, reporting what you see. So, I think a lot of people don't realize how important that is. But just like in Chris's case with the North Atlantic right whales, if somebody didn't report it, we never would have known.
Yeah.
So, you see a whale or any cetacean or pinniped, you can report it to Gotham Whale. You can report it on our website. We do have our citizen science program, and it does support both conservation and management of these different species, because not only do we analyze our data, but we do share it with other groups that are looking at better ways to manage them, especially in the New York City area, right? It's incredibly important. The other thing is, I know it gets said all the time, but doing what you can to keep things like balloons out of the ocean, plastic bags out of the ocean. New Jersey is one of the few states that has since banned plastic bags, which is amazing. I can't tell you the difference out on the water, driving around the state on the highways, just not seeing those plastic bags all over the place has been amazing. But unfortunately, we do still see quite a bit of debris out there. So I think, limiting waste in general versus the recycling mantra, less than 10% of what we try to recycle actually gets recycled. So I think, reusing is where we need to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Chris?
I was going to echo that balloon sentiment. I spent some time off Montauk this summer where certain areas down on the tip of Long Island have banned balloon releases. And being able to see, I mean, obviously New York City has way more people, but seeing relatively fewer balloons out on the water out there was really eye-opening to see. Like it made me realize how many balloons I do see off of New York, and knowing the threat that those pose. And then in a similar vein, supporting your local conservation organizations, whether that's Gotham Whale or an organization like Gotham Whale, or your local stranding network. These are the organizations that are collecting the data that scientists and managers need to protect these animals. And without them, we wouldn't have the data that we need to make those decisions and make sure these animals are safe. So I think putting your money where your mouth is pretty important, and making sure these things continue to happen.
That's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. All right. Is there anything else you would like to add before we wrap up?
I don't think so.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been amazing. I've learned so many things, and I have millions of more questions, but we will let you go and I will ask them later. But thank you again.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
I am so sad that I did not get to speak to Danielle and Chris myself. I'm very, very jealous. It sounds like such a cool episode and so many cool stories. Of course, we would love to hear your thoughts on this or any episode. So please visit our website at whale-tales.org and find links to all of our social media handles so that you can drop us a line.
You can find Gotham Whale at gothamwhale.org. And their sightings program that Danielle talked about, which is called Wanted, is at gothamwhale.org/wanted. You can also find Gotham Whale on Instagram at Gotham Whale, one word. Danielle is NJ Whale Girl and on Instagram, and she wanted us to shout out Jersey Shore Whale Watch and American Princess Cruises, as she and Chris both work for them. And Jersey Shore is one of our storytellers who send us lots of fun humpback stories and some fin whales, minkies from the Jersey coast. And yeah, we find out all sorts of cool things about what's going on over there.
So cool.
You can find them all on Instagram. Jersey Shore Whale Watch, all together. American Princess Cruises has underscores in between the words.
Yeah. You can head to our website to subscribe to the podcast, learn about supporting us and becoming a patron. And while you're there, you can check out over 1,500 whale, dolphin, and porpoise stories.
That's whale-tales.org. Tales like the story, not tales like the animal.
And if you've seen a cetacean, we would love to add your story to our library. You can click the share link on our site, or you can contact us on social media at whaletales_org, or you can email us a voice memo and tell us all about your incredible cetacean encounter.
Finally, we want to acknowledge that we recorded today's episode on the unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Chianu, and Wisanic nations.
Thanks everybody so much, and have a whaley great day. In New York or wherever you are.